Welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with a gentleman who has written a book, an interesting book, a fictional book, but it's about his experiences as a former police officer, a lawyer, and just how does corruption actually happen. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Good evening for you and good morning for me. And thankfully, we've already agreed we can discuss the topic of the book, which is an advantage.
Yes. Yes, good day, David. It's good to be on your show. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And just briefly, because in the bio, it said you're from Belfast originally.
Yes, that's correct.
And now in Sydney.
Yes.
And so just give us an outline of what the book is about.
The book, David, is looking in a very broad sense. It's a work of fiction, of course. It's a novel, but it's looking at corruption. And most people in their day-to-day lives probably don't come into contact too much with anything that is corrupt. But we expect agencies like police forces, for example, to be non-corrupt. And we expect a lot from them. So the whole aim of the book was to try and get people to start thinking, well, what is corruption? How far would you let it go? I have a hypothesis that most people will accept a little bit of corruption. Like if
Mm.
a police officer wants to take a hamburger or a sandwich, that's all right. We're prepared to turn a blind eye to that. But at some point, as it goes along the line, then we as a society and people will say, oh, no, that's enough. Don't accept that. So the whole theme of the book is corruption. As you point out, I was born and raised in Belfast, and at the height of the strife over there. So there was a lot of corruption going on, whether it was the army, whether it was police forces, whether it was other groups. And so I then left and came out here and had no intentions of staying in Sydney. But I suppose, unsurprisingly, I was in love with the blue skies and the sunshine. And
Imagine that
I
from
thought,
Belfast, but like in sunshine and blue skies.
imagine that.
How does that happen?
And how does that happen? Because, as you know, over in the UK, it's dull, it's
It's pissing
gloomy,
down with rain as we speak, to be fair.
as we
And
speak.
it has been
And
for
I
2 days.
has it.
Not a surprise.
No, and I have news for you, and it's all bad. That ain't going to
No,
change.
it's not. No, it's not.
So the whole idea was I came out here as a youth, and I had the intention to spend a few years here and then go on to the States, the United States. And but I came out here and I was just amazed by the blue skies. It's big. It's like a big, massive blue sky, and the sunshine, and it was warm, and yeah, you didn't need big coats all the time with your head against the wind. And I thought, no, I'll stay here
And
instead.
you could look up without the rain ripping your eyeballs out.
Exactly right. So then got into the cops over here. Then did a law degree at night time, and then I did more degrees at night time, and then I left the place. And then I act for my, in terms of clients, I act for them now, I appear for them in court. So as a result of that, you get to see how the intricacies of the police and how they work. We would get the briefs, so we know what they're doing. We know how their phones are being bugged. We know how things happen.
Mm.
And then about 10 or 12 years ago here, we had a royal commission into the police force because of it was allegedly corrupt. And it went on for some time, 18 months at least, it went on for, and it exposed entrenched corruption, not just little bits of corruption, but entrenched, long-term, systemic corruption. Went to the highest echelons of the police force at that time. That's what was said through some of the things in the Royal Commission. And for most people, it came as a sort of a shock. I mean, we all expect our police to do the right thing. And do not get me wrong, the overwhelming majority of police, whether it be the Met in New Scotland Yard, whether it be the FBI, whether it be whoever, the overwhelming bulk of those people join to do the right thing. But what happens if there's a culture or a subculture within that structure that's not so good? So speed forward, by that time I had left the police for a long, long time. I was doing defence work, as I've said. And then about 3 years ago, CV-19 hit. And I'm not sure what it was like over in the UK, but here, 5.5 million people in this town shut down.
Mm.
It was startling to go out on the streets and it's empty. And it was concerning. So it meant the courts as well shut down. So the work I do is in courts to defend people. And it meant for some months all those courts would just stop. The whole town was stopped. So I was sitting twiddling my thumbs thinking, what am I going to do? And then I had this idea that had been in my mind for a long, long time about a novel about corrupt place and just the overall theme of corruption. And the temptation, where the main guy in the book is how far can you push him? How far can he be corrupt before people would say, no, it's not acceptable? Because you most likely, like myself, you would have been raised in the UK on a diet of police shows
Mm.
like Z cars, Task Force, and
The bill.
and The Bill.
See
You
it?
know, that was a good show.
Yeah.
But
What was the one with
but
Cody
in
and
those
Doyle?
shows,
What was the one with
hmm?
Cody and Doyle?
I can't
The
remember that
Professionals.
one.
It was the Professionals.
Oh, that was a good one too.
Ah.
But you'll find in almost all of those shows, without exception, and of course the old original Dixon of Doc Green,
Mm.
Sergeant Dixon. Almost in all of those shows, they were always depicted as the police being the good guys.
Yes.
Now, I thought, well, it's not always true because I know there's been investigations into the Met in New Scotland Yard. There's been investigations into Irish police forces, investigations into the police force in New York. So what happens if there's a subculture within that just goes bad, it's rogue? So I thought that would be a good theme. And to test out this idea I have that most people, I think, are at least understanding of a little bit small scale corruption, but how far would that go? So that was the theme for the book. And the book looks at all kinds of issues and corruption, and there's gunfights in it for those people who like action. There is something in there for everyone. But I also wanted to explore the theme about the press. What role does the press play in all of this? For example, as we sit here, somewhere in the world, the police will be executing a search warrant somewhere, and miraculously, outside is the press.
Mm.
So how did they get tipped off to be there at that time?
Well, we're
So
having a lot of that. The press is a good point because we're having a lot of this in the UK at the moment. There is a massive, massive amount, and maybe rightly so, attention on Prince Andrew and his past lives, right?
yes.
No attention on the cover-up of the grooming gangs, the rape gangs, which is still
Oh,
ongoing. The whole inquiry, which has been shut down by various governments, not just the Labour government, is completely ignored. They still
yes.
don't cover it. They still don't talk about it on the main news channels. But Prince Andrew is on the front page and the headline story for everything because of allegations, which I believe are correct. I'm not trying to dispute. I'm not trying to defend his character in any way. But we have a current crisis that is being covered up. The government refused to do a national inquiry, and when they did local inquiries, recently 4 of the girls involved on the panel, who were all victims, resigned because they were put under pressure to shut up. Did the media say anything about it? No, nothing whatsoever. The 3 men, I've got to be careful here because this is alleged. The 3 men who were involved in the burning of Keir Starmer's private apartment are allegedly all male models and male escorts. And unsurprisingly, even though they have been accused of arson of the Prime Minister's private apartment, it's not gone to court yet.
Well, that's.
Well, I wonder why that is.
I don't
Is
know
that
much
because of
about that.
allegations about maybe his sexual preferences?
Well, I don't know. I'm not there, but it seems to be that the press are extraordinarily selective. I'm going back to the Andrew example, Prince Andrew example.
He's
Of
not
course,
Prince Andrew anymore, is he?
no,
He's
that's
been
right.
completely stripped of all his titles. He's now
But
he's now Windsor Mountbatten.
well, he is Windsor Mountbatten now, but it seems extraordinary. I think, look, I don't know enough of the detail about it, but you would think if you had all these gangs in Rochdale and elsewhere who may have been not investigated the way they should have been investigated for a long, long time, you'd think that the established press would have been keen to go after that as a story. I mean, there wouldn't be one story there, there'd be many stories.
Yeah.
Like what happens in each case? Who takes the decision not to investigate?
Yes.
At what rank is that decision made? And as you go up the chain of command, the top, and it almost always stops and ends at the top, who gave any direction or directions what to do or what not to do? Now, all those are key questions. It seems that what staggers me is the press seem to be a tool, a useful tool. When I'm talking about the press, I'm talking about the main press, your main organs of the press. They are a useful tool. When they want to, they can be very effective in their investigations. But that's the issue. What investigations are they prepared to do, and what investigations are they not prepared to do? And it seems to me that we have entered a society where everyone is risk adverse, whether it be the big organizations, and no one wants to take a risk unless it's an easy target. Going back to Andrew, unfortunately for him now, that's what he is. He's an easy guy. He can be attacked.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's where it's at.
I mean, one of the common consensus that I've heard through podcasts, and there was a gentleman who's written a book about the fall of the House of York, and he basically talks about with the late Queen now gone, he has no protection afforded to him, and she just effectively, and it's quite astounding now that she's passed away, people coming out and saying like, because of all of the royal cover-ups, and it's kind of just actually what she enabled to be covered up, which were previously always rumours. And it's interesting because at the beginning you said something about corruption and at what level do people tolerate corruption. And I think what happens to some degree is it is the language we use, because if you're internal in that process, it's the perks of the job. From the outside looking in, you'll say it's corruption. And I remember many years ago, I used to work on a kebab van, and obviously we used to serve the local police force. Now, I categorically will say, I was never, ever, ever asked for any perks or any discount, but they bloody well got them because
Well,
you know what I mean.
that's the truth.
There was not a single police officer that ever came to that kebab van and paid full price for anything. And now I will state that was partly the instructions of the owner. It's like you don't make sure you're kind to them, and it was for our own benefit because you can imagine a kebab van outside army camps late at night. You want a quick response when things kick off. And so we always looked at them very favourably because they were very favourable customers to have around. And, if you can imagine late nights police officers, it's very good to have them in the vicinity when, drunken soldiers may be a little bit clashing with various crowds and people. It's that sort of environment. But I will be clear, I never once ever was ever asked by them. And they always, to be fair to them, all the ones I met, were always like, "Are you sure? Because you don't have to do that." And you're like, "No. But literally, we appreciate the attention we get from you." So,
Oh, absolutely.
perk of
Look,
the
I'm
job
not.
or corruption? It's
Well, I guess most people would accept that. It's no big deal.
and that's it. And I think,
However,
sorry, I was just going to say, I think once you're in that position, there is, like you said at the very beginning, most people, and I do apologise, I cut you off there, but most people are just genuinely honest and appreciate the kindness, and like we appreciate you appreciating us doing our job. And then out of every 100, there's one person. And then if you've got a force of 100,000, that one becomes 1,000, and you've got 1,000 people who are prepared to be corrupt. And
yes, so it escalates.
yeah,
But what happens then when you get a group like that entrenched, who help each other as they through their careers? In terms of, it starts off, they're all quite young, they're all quite keen. Then they get corrupted by the system. Then, in terms of getting a leg up to go up the chain of command, they do that and they get into positions of real authority. Uh, all the way through that. I mean, that might take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to do that. But if that group continues with that, then they wield enormous clout, enormous power.
and it is, isn't it?
And
Because sometimes it's just it's always well covered in TV police, like sitcoms and TV series and stuff like that, or films where there was a perfectly good, honest police officer in any capacity, and he made a mistake and he feared losing their job or something, and the next thing you know, the sergeant or someone else covers for him, or the other person, the person that made the mistake, says, "Look, you need to cover for me because otherwise I won't watch your back." And suddenly human nature kicks in with a bit of fear and panic, and before you know it, there you've got this little skeleton in your closet, and it's 10 years down the line, and now you're a sergeant or you're the inspector, or it's just like,
yes.
there's a lot on the line, a lot of risk.
Yeah, well, you could add to that. I mean, could you imagine if that young guy you mentioned who made the mistake and the sergeant looked after him, protected his back? Could you imagine speed forward the next year and
Mm.
both of them are in an elite squad like the drug squad?
Mm.
And like for example, I always give an example. Could you imagine the highway patrol? You're in the highway patrol. You're a young constable. One night you pull over a car. There's a gentleman in the car. You ask him to open up his boot. You open up the boot. There's two suitcases. One loaded with cocaine, and the other with cash, 100,000 quid. And he says to you, "Well, why don't you take the quids and I just go home?"
Yeah.
What would you do?
Well, because this is it. Because people think that, like I said, that there is a percentage of people who are just quite corrupt and quite horrible, but then there's a percentage like that example you give. If you're a police officer on your own, maybe you've maybe you're getting divorced, maybe something's happened and you are just in debt, and you're
Yes.
like, I might lose the roof over my head, And suddenly somebody says, look, hey, you've caught me. There's only me and you here. Why don't you ignore me and I'll ignore you taking that money? And if you are
Yep.
up to your eyeballs in debt, and if you do need a lifeline, it's not black and white like people want it to be. It just
No.
isn't. And that's before, and I think that's where we have to kind of have some awareness. There are people who are just corrupt, and you could give them everything in the world and they'd still steal the lollipop out of a baby's
What
mouth.
more?
Yeah, right. But then there's people who just get caught in the wrong circumstances, and we all like to think we have integrity, but it's not that simple.
Well, it's not. I mean, to go back to your example again, and it's always good to use these examples. Imagine it's the constable and the sergeant, and they're both out on patrol, and these two have stopped the car.
Mm.
And the young constable doesn't quite know what to do, but he wants to keep his job and he loves the place. But the sergeant said, now look, son, I have an idea.
Yeah,
We will let him go. Just take the money.
yeah,
What happens then?
yeah. That's it. Yeah. Well, what do you do?
I mean, I often think it's all very well for people who just read the Sun or the Express or the Times. Oh, police corruption, blah 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 blah. But it's too easy because they haven't been in that position.
Mm. And it
So
is,
they're not in.
and they're the same people when they're at their own job turn a blind eye for people with the perks because they don't want to be the grass. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to be, everybody at work knowing, well, you watch your back when Watson's around because Watson will do X, Y, and Z. And I always remember years ago, I used to do, in the UK, we have a thing called the Appropriate Adult Scheme. And that's for young people, typically under the age of 18, who don't have a guardian that can come out and represent them in a police cell. But it can also apply to people with mental health or disabilities. So
Yes.
over a period of a few years, I've probably done about 1,000 hours in police interviews where I'm sitting
Well,
next.
that's interesting.
Yes, so where I'm sitting with people who, for whatever reason, and tragically, sometimes I do remember talking to the odd parent, and they're like, "I don't give a shit. Do what you fucking want with him," and just hang up on you. And you're just like, well, that's why I'm here, because the poor bugger knows that nobody gives a shit about him.
Yes.
And I can genuinely say, what the two things that always stood out when it came to the police. Only once did I ever hear a police officer correct the person being interviewed, the arrestee, when they said, "Oh, well, mate, you know how it is," and he went, "Stop. I'm not your friend. I'm a police officer investigating a crime, and you're the person that's been arrested for it. I am not your friend. Let's not do that."
Yeah.
And he's the only once did I ever hear a police officer do that. All of the others, the amount of times I've had to say to somebody, "Stop, he's not your friend. Stop referring to him as mate. Stop being informal. You've already asked that question in 3 different ways. You're now long," because we have the codes of practice, which was like 1998, but it was in the early noughties when I was doing it. It's just like, you're not allowed to do that, and you forever correcting police officers who knew damn well they were skirting along the edge of the rules, sorry, just trying to trip the young person up or the vulnerable. And sometimes, you're talking about a 13, 14-year-old who's just been told by me, your parents are not coming. And they're like, yeah, I know. They don't give a monkey's about me. So it's not like they come from a place of somebody's got my back. I know that I can be trusted. I know that, or they're genuinely a vulnerable adult, might have autism, might have a learning disabilities. And there's this culture. And I wouldn't know how you corrected it, if I'm honest, because your only job is to find villains, and you think everybody is one.
Yes.
And it just is so blinkered that
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that then becomes because to them that's not corruption. They're just like, it's no, but you are acting in a corrupt way because you are deliberately challenging this person in a way you know that you're not supposed to be, but you're doing it in such a fine margin it wouldn't get kicked out by the CPS. But if I wasn't here, you would have illegally obtained a statement from that person, and they would not have realised they incriminalised themselves. And definitely sometimes, not often to be fair, they were bloody innocent, and one or two police officers didn't care. Not my problem. I'm just doing my job.
Now, it's interesting you say that because in terms of the defense work I do, that's what we see repeatedly. There's all kinds of safeguards supposedly in the system. But as you pointed out quite correctly, there are ways around that. And for very experienced police officers, and particularly young people, and particularly those young people who come from homes that you've just described, who have no backup, they've got no support person, who oftentimes haven't have been to school much, they're not real bright. Those people in the hands of experienced police officers, especially detectives, they don't stand a chance.
No.
And if it weren't for people like you being prepared to take the time and go in to try as best you can to protect them, you would know over and over and over again, as I do here, there are many innocent people inside jail. It's I mean to pretend there's not. And unfortunately, we like to mislead ourselves by pretending we have a fine legal system and it'll all be worked out in the end. Well, yeah, that's just not correct. The legal system is a very straightforward system. The judges aren't there to take sides. They're strictly going to be independent as much as they can be. They leave it to the two sides to conduct the case in the court, and that's that. But most people, again, and indeed that might be a thing for a book, a new book. How independent is the court system? How independent is the magistrates? How independent are the judges? Like, for example, I was doing a podcast yesterday up in the United States. And as you know, in the United States, for certain positions, for example, judgeships, you aren't appointed as such, but you actually contest it. So in some states in America, if you want to be a judge in a court, you have to contest that. You have to stand for it. Whereas in the UK and Ireland and here, the actual people who get appointed to the bench are appointed. So you don't know much about them.
No.
Whereas, for example, in the United States, the Congress can call someone who's applied to be a judge before them. And the Congress, who then represent the will of the people, can then drill down into these people to see if whether or not they're the right man or person for the job. Whereas in England and out here, that's not the case. The judges are just get the job. And what is striking is it's a job for life. Unless you do something extraordinarily wrong and get caught, it's a very powerful position being a judge, and you can be there for a very long time. And what goes on behind the scenes, you just don't know.
Well, it's. I think this is something that people don't think about enough when it comes to like levels of corruption. Corruption is an interpretation of what I'm entitled to, not what the rules state. And what I mean by that is I'm living in what would probably be described in the UK as a council estate. You know, I live with my mum, and we're pretty much born and bred, you know, in and around the area, and it's what we would call a 3-bedroom semi-detached house, ex-council house. So I effectively live on a former council estate. Now, I been fortunate in my life, not just because of podcasts, but because I worked in the car trade and stuff like that. So I've met some very wealthy and influential people. And but also I grew up in and around my local town, and the attitude that people in the working classes can have towards the wealthy and the entitled and the privileged, well, put a mirror in front of that, because that's the attitude they have towards you. They don't see you as them the same as you don't see yourself as them.
Yes.
These people are we were talking about the royal family, and I was having a conversation with somebody, not on the podcast, just in general, and I said the thing you have to understand, say, about the former Prince Andrew, from the day he was born, he's never done anything for himself. He's never run a bath. He's never boiled an egg. He's probably never even tied his own shoelaces. He's always had a valet, always had a chauffeur. He's always had a cook. There's always been a press. Everything has always been done to him. He cannot have a normal view of what the world is like. He's probably never even handled his own passport. He's probably never even seen it. And
Yes.
so when people are like, well, how does he do this? How does he do that? Where's his moral standing? What do you think someone like that has as a moral standing? Everybody he's ever met, for the most part, is either some form of servant and therefore provides a level of servitude, or is a person that is also served and has servants. Because whether he's meeting a diplomat, well, the diplomat's the top person, or whether he's meeting head of state, these are all people where everybody serves them. So he's never done a milk round. He's never gone into the newspaper shop at 4:00 in the morning, got a bollocking off the newspaper manager because he missed fucking so-and-so's paper at number 10 yesterday. That's never happened to him. He doesn't know what that means.
Yeah. It's very, very hard to apply what we think is the correct yeah, standard, or else the standards, because of what you've just said. I mean, it's quite correct. For example, if you look at Andrew, and those people are being born into a whole regime of wealth. They don't really know what it's like outside of that. And so, in some ways, it's a tad unfair to expect them to know when they couldn't possibly know.
Yeah. If you go to the best boarding schools, and you go to Eton, you go to Oxford, you go to Cambridge, and all of these things, I would imagine, and I'm sure you can correct me, most of the defence lawyers or lawyers that you work around are not ex-police officers who went back to night school, right?
Oh no.
Exactly, right. So if you go to an Eton or Cambridge or an Oxford or any of those elite establishments, and I don't mean, I'm not saying elite to emphasize anything, just you either get in there because of exceptional grades or exceptional wealth.
Yes.
Nobody there has the ambition to be a middle manager. They are supposed to be, and it is demanded of them, that you will be the next leader of industry, the next leader of commerce, the next prime minister, or the next treasurer, home secretary, or you're going to join the diplomatic service. That's just the same as anybody that goes to a military academy. You go in to train as an officer. You are expected to be an officer, and if you have a military history, it's a given that to some degree you're going to be looked after, in the sense of, you've got your commission before you even applied to the college, to the military academy. That commission was, well, it'd have been harder for you to say no than it would have been to say yes.
Yes. It's sort of what you described there. There's a debate going on, which has been going on for some time. Now, in psychology, and as part of the defense work I do, we get reports from psychologists for clients and psychiatrists. So all over the years, I've read thousands of these reports. So I have a very good understanding, even though I'm not a trained psychiatrist or psychologist, I have a very good understanding. But there's now a debate. I mean, for years and years and years, we were told this concept, we all have free will.
Yeah, doesn't exist.
There is a debate going on right now that that is a
It
nonsense,
is.
that we don't have free will. And you have just explored that because, and I could use it in a strange context and going back to, say, for example, Andrew or someone gone to Eton or wherever. And when I say the elites, I mean, they don't really have free will. They're born into that.
Hmm. It's
And there is these expectations that are placed on them at birth and before birth. So to expect them to try and exercise a free will and to think independently, maybe adversely to that, that's a big ask.
what
Now, it's compounded by if you twist it around or if it's turned around, someone born on a council estate whose mum and dad have to work very, very hard in the coal mine or the factory or wherever, to say they have a free will when they know from the day they're born the way it's going to be. In fact, there's more and more in terms of in terms of research. There's more and more research now that shows if you're born into the working class, that's it. You will stay there.
was
So
because
the whole notion that you can sort of work your way out of this has not has been shown to be just not true. It's extraordinarily hard to work your way out of it.
I think, yeah, because there's what I would say is in terms of textbooks, if you're writing it down, you can put up a good argument for free will. As an individual like you, I have an interest in psychology because my predominant work in life is working with people with head injuries. So I do a lot of sort of occupational rehabilitation. But I'm also a qualified hypnotherapist. So I know exactly, or I have a good insight compared to most people about how the mind works and leading questions. NLP is a big thing, whether people agree with it or not. And social conditioning is a thing. You are, as Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right. And it's as that simple, is what you believe. Now, you can exercise free will in the sense of, do I want a cup of tea or do I want a cup of coffee? What you cannot exercise is your subconscious beliefs. Unless you do a lot of work, and the only people that tend to do that are people that have had traumatic experiences or breakdowns, because it's then just required. But if you feel that your life is going okay, there's no reason why you would sit down and spend years questioning what your social conditioning is, and there isn't a reason to, and you wouldn't get any answers because you're not trying to recover from anything. You don't necessarily have anything holding you back, or you don't necessarily have limited beliefs. But just like if you grew up in a military family and everybody before you was in the military, there is a very good chance that you will just expect yourself to join the military because of just actually, you're from Northern Ireland. My mum is from Southern Ireland, right? So you talked about, well, you didn't talk about it, you mentioned the troubles of the 70s and the 80s. So my mum, a Southern Irish Catholic, married a British soldier. So as a kid in the 80s, my dad, being a British soldier, naturally got posted to Northern Ireland. Guess who didn't go with him? The Catholic family from Southern Ireland. No shit. Right? My uncle, born and bred in Ireland, and when his family moved over, because my granddad joined the British Army and then the MOD, and it's really weird because my uncle then joined the British Army, like his granddad, like my granddad, right? But when he got posted to Northern Ireland and landed in Northern Ireland with his Irish passport, they put him on the plane straight back to England and said, you can't be in Northern Ireland because you're Irish. And he's like, I'm in the fucking British Army. You posted me here, but they wouldn't let him serve. And the reason, so it's very difficult for me to have an opinion about Ireland and Northern Ireland because I'm on both sides. But I have Southern Irish relatives who have very distinct opinions, and I'm sure you know plenty of people in Northern Ireland have very distinct opinions. And when you then take those deep-rooted beliefs, that's how the person whose dad or mum, whatever, was a doctor becomes a doctor, because that's all they know. That's how Protestants are Protestants. It's how Catholics are Catholics. It's the culture you're born into. And when you're born into that culture, you don't ever develop another set of belief systems unless you one day sit down and kind of look at a family tree of what your belief systems are and say, where does the roots come from? How was that seeded? Because that's how the builder has an apprentice son who then takes over the family building firm. It's just like, well, because dad was a builder and I've been mixing muck with him since I was big enough to pick up a trowel, and it's all I did. And I loved being in his transit van when we went to jobs when I was on school holidays. And he loved being a builder because that's what he did with his dad. That's what he did with his old man. And it's things like that. But when your dad was the Prime Minister, or your dad's the future King of England, or your dad is the chairman of JCB, or whatever it is, you maybe don't have an ambition to be the milkman.
No, no, it's look, it's all very interesting, the way these things work out. But at the end of the day, perhaps it's too deep, the whole thing, whether or not, for example, as you quite rightly, correctly say, most people don't need to drill down. It is what it is, and that's just life, and keep going. So I can't complain. I was lucky I was on each side of the coin, as it were. I could arrest people and did arrest people for all kinds of offences. But I was very lucky in that I was able to escape that mindset, and I went to the other side. And the thing that strikes me overwhelmingly on the defense side is that most people are sorry, most crime is not organized. Like, and of course, I am not talking about organized crime. I'm talking about almost the vast bulk of crime you'll ever come across is not organized. It's young people go out on a night, they're in a pub. One guy looks at the other guy's girlfriend, they've had a few pints. The girlfriend smiles back, a fight starts, punches thrown, young guy gets killed.
Yeah,
Now, when they all went out that night, no one intended to do that. And it just happens. And it's like so much crime. It just happens. Now, I'm not trying to condone it. I'm not trying to excuse it, but that is the fact of life. And so all of a sudden, you've got two sets of folks whose lives are totally turned upside down as a result of a punch that night. You've got the deceased and the guy who killed him. And that's tough because the families are just destroyed.
yeah. They are, and like you say, it's Friday today. It's Friday night already in Sydney, and
Mhm.
people are going to go out tonight with every intention of just having a few beers and a good time, nothing else. Somebody's going to get hurt tonight, and
Yeah.
nobody intended that to happen. Nobody went out tonight and said, I'm going to find a random person for no other reason and do my best to maim him in some way or her in some way.
No.
Emotions escalate, misunderstandings become more misunderstood, and before you know, and I know this because I work in head injuries,
Mhm.
something irreversible happens, and there isn't a single person in that moment that wouldn't do everything in the eyes of God to go back 5 minutes and walk away.
Well, I'm in this unfortunate position because of the defense work I do that very often clients say exactly what you have just said.
Mm.
If only I could turn back the clock. if only I hadn't have said this, or if only I hadn't have said that. And it's often misunderstood, like you've got this brigade who just hang the bastards, or lock them up, just throw the keys away. Well, it's all very well saying that until it's you, or it's your child, or it's your
Yeah,
son. Like I've acted on the defense side of it for cops, for police, or I've acted for their sons who have got themselves into strife. Now, up until that time, these guys would have been really harsh men in a sense. They're all crims, they should all be locked up attitude until it happens to them.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden, instead of being black and white, their world becomes grey.
yeah.
Because that's the way the world is. It's grey.
It is, and I think, like you say, and I think there is that confusion between accidental crime, for want of a better analogy, and deep-rooted corruption, where
Mm.
people at the highest level are just, well, I'm allowed to do this because of who I am,
Oh, yes.
and I think that's where, like you say, when Northern Ireland, without trying to get into it, is a good example, because both sides will believe their beliefs. It's not negotiable. And both sides were taking the lives of people, but they were never considered people. They were considered the enemy. So there becomes a human justification for actions. And that's any conflict. That when the person is opposite you, you are not capable, no matter how well informed or how compassionate you are. If you view somebody as the enemy, you can't love them like your brother. You can't love them like your sister.
Yeah, well, it's the same as what was happening over there. You mentioned about the gangs that groomed.
Yeah.
If you look at
Mm.
what the army did over there and the things that they excused,
Yeah.
they actually ran gangs that killed people.
Mm.
They turned a blind eye when the guns came in to support one side. And it's the same thing. I mean, for years they've been saying they should have a royal commission into that. Well, it's not going to happen
No.
because you've got entrenched organizations, you've got intel organizations, policing organizations, and these organizations are incredibly powerful. They have it within their power to obstruct a royal commission. Say, for example, I mean, it's not going to happen. Say, for example, at midnight tonight, they were going to call for a royal commission into what the army did from this year to that year. I can tell you now, you first of all, you're going to have to find a judge to do it. And here she's going, oh no, this is too hot. I'm not going to do it. And if they did find someone to do it, then you've got to give them support staff. And then they might be thinking, no, no, this is too hot, this context. Eventually you'll get a team, but then the walls will go up. You've got the MOD who's independent
Mm.
and they will do whatever they feel is the right thing for them to do.
Yeah.
Then you've got the independent organizations, whether it be an intel organization, a policing organization, who are independent and who can fund their own legal teams. So they can put up walls. And so all of a sudden your Royal Commission is stopped in
Mm.
court action and it could be bogged down there for years. And if eventually it ever did get off of the ground, it'll be bogged down over and over again.
I
So
was
that's the way it works.
listening to somebody talk this morning, and I got to be clear. I don't know all the details, but the former head of the British Army, one of the generals, has spoken out about the amount of special forces people that are retiring. They're just leaving the special forces, and it's because they're concerned that the Labour government are trying to push through legislation that, and again, I don't know all the details, so this is paraphrasing badly, but effectively you could be open to prosecution for crimes that you may or may not have committed. And it's exactly that. These people are already leaving because they're like, whoa, hang on a second. And effectively what they're really saying is, you guys order us to do things, and now you're trying to make us accountable for that. No, no, no. We're getting out now because we know what you're like. We know where you send us. We know what you tell us to do. So, and again, I'm going to be careful because there's lots of incidences where it has come out that some of these soldiers may have been given the wrong orders. Is that a polite way of saying they were told to assassinate somebody, but may not have actually
Yeah.
been under the impression? And this is what I've got to be sort of like really clear, right? And you would actually know this kind of in the police. You'll be given a brief of what it is you're expected to do. You might not be given a brief of the background. And if you're a special forces officer or special forces soldier in any special forces, you sometimes have to go in and kill people because that's your job. You don't necessarily know if what you've been told, if you've been told about that person, what it is they're being killed for or why. And I've spoken to enough ex-military men to say that sometimes they suspect they get sent somewhere on a false pretense and it all kicks off. And because they're highly trained soldiers, the result is that, unfortunately, the mission went wrong and 4 people in that room were killed. It then 20 years
But
down the line comes out that these 4 people may have had political opposition somewhere.
well, also what happens when the SF, who you're referring to, what happens if they become rogue? What happens
Oh, yeah, yeah,
if
absolutely. Like
and
you
it
say, you've only got to
happens?
get 1%.
Yeah,
You know,
and what happens when they start to take the law into their own hands? And what happens when they kill people who they ought not to have killed?
mm,
So it's all very well for people to say, "Oh well," like for example, and no doubt you've heard this example. I remember in my day, you had the old police sergeant. And if he caught you doing something, you got to kick up the backside
exactly that. And a clip round the
on
ear,
the right.
and he'd
However,
nick your
what about
cigarettes.
yeah? How about when the same old police sergeant is up to his eyeballs and things?
Yeah,
He's corrupt. What happens when that kick in the backside means the kneecap is gone? You
yeah, yeah. No, but
know?
that's it's these things. I can remember as a kid, local police, and you might get a little bit of a clip round the ear. I remember getting caught with alcohol and then pouring it out on the grass in front of me. I remember another police officer, because he knew I was under 16, taking my cigarettes off me. There's your lesson. And he walked off and smoked them, right? And right? But I was under 16, shouldn't have them. Now, you can swallow your pride, David, and you've saved me having to buy 20 Benson and Hedges. Or you can report me for theft and you'll just be nicked because I confiscated the cigarettes of somebody that shouldn't have bought them. Right? So but is that corruption or is that teaching a kid a lesson? And it's to me, but the thing is, like you say, with some of these police officers, is that also? I used to know a gentleman called Tony, and he was ex plod as he refers to himself, and he started in Wiltshire, ended up in London, and he said, and he always this one incident he was telling me they went in. It would be about late 70s, probably early 80s. They busted a house in Brixton, and this guy went absolutely nuts because he had already paid his fees. And he was like, "Who the hell are you? What the fucking hell are you doing here?" And he said, this guy was just like, he was incandescent with rage because he'd paid his fees already. And he said, like, we've stormed this house because we've got this warrant to serve him because he's a drug dealer. So we've got a warrant to break in and smash in the door. And we've no idea that this guy has been paying officers to go about his business. And
Well, it's extraordinary. I mean, as you know, the state of New South Wales and its history and how it began. In the UK had all these crims, they wanted to offload them, so they send them in boats to come down here. Now, it's quite remarkable. For 200 years, there was allegations and counter allegations right throughout that time about corruption and it was always the case. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Well, about, as I said, about 15 years ago, they decided to have a go. They staged a royal commission here, and it was extraordinary. One by one, they were able to turn corrupt police officers who pointed up the chain. Well, he told me to do it.
Yeah.
And then he pointed up. Well, he allowed me to do it. And then he allowed me to do it. And then all of a sudden, this house of cards started to come crashing down. Now, the extraordinary thing is, people then say they were shocked. And of course, they were. They were shocked at the scale of it. But they shouldn't have been shocked because over and over and over and over again in the courts, the defense were saying things like this.
Yeah.
You verbaled my client. To come back to your example, what you were saying in the police stations, now they record them here like they do in the UK. Before that, they didn't have to record them. But what happens even before that stage on the way back in the police car where they're not recording?
Mm.
And you've got a young man squeezed in between two large detectives, and he's been told, when we get back to the station, you have to say something. This is what we want you to say. So it's those kind of things. So the scale of corruption was quite, well, it did surprise most people, although they shouldn't have been surprised. And I would expect it's the same in all, whether it's elsewhere in the world. These organizations, by the way they operate, it's closed organizations
Yeah.
for a start. In fact, there was a case, I think it was in the UK recently, where someone was allowed in for a few weeks to a police station to see what was going on. And of course, to come back to your example, when you were in those police stations, they knew you were there
Yeah.
for a start. They knew you were an outsider. They knew you were independent. And of course, in the law, in psychology, it's very well known and understood, as no doubt you're aware, we behave differently when we're being watched.
Yeah.
And certainly
Exactly.
when you've got an independent guy like you in the station, that's not how they would behave, the police. They'd be trying to do the right thing for that time.
Yeah.
It's when you guys aren't there. And yeah, look, it's extraordinary, and the whole theme of the book is to try and get people to think about these things. I'm not saying that we're going to change the world by it, but it'd be nice for them to start thinking and not just assume blindly and to everything they hear and read, assume it's right.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think, as you made that point as well earlier, is it goes the thing I think people don't understand as well, that whilst it goes all the way to the top doesn't know what the bottom is doing.
that's right.
But everyone below him is, well, you told me to do that, so you know that I'm doing this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to put this under the same umbrella, but I haven't told you about it, right? But because you've turned a blind eye, you can't. When you find out about this, I'll just say no, no, no. When it suited you, we could do that. So
That's right.
everybody rolls the barrel over the other guy's foot.
Well, it's in terms of deniability. That's what it's about. You turn a blind eye. Oh, well, I didn't tell you to do that, but by my omission not to take control of the situation, like for example, and this is something that most people don't understand, the rank of constable is independent. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that as far as the office of constable is concerned, it's an ancient office and independent. So each constable of police has got powers, extraordinary powers to do certain things. Now, most people think that there's a rank structure above them, which there is. Like there's the sergeants, there's the inspectors, sub-inspectors, and it goes all the way up. And most people think there's this huge organization who are going to watch what the constable is doing. That's not the way it works because the constable goes out and he has his shift, which will last 8 hours or whatever it is. But the actions he's taken, he might be looked at each 2 or 3 days. The sergeant might take his notebook, but the sergeant's not going to drill down and say, well, what's happening here and what's happening there? Like for the work I do, defense work, oftentimes the actions of the police, you think, what's going on here? Isn't there someone above him to tell him, no, you can't do that? And from time to time, we're very successful in court. We win. And in terms of getting costs against the police, it's hard to do, but sometimes you do it. Now, if the system worked well, that ought not to happen
Yeah.
because someone above them with more expertise should be saying, no, it's not going to work this case. Don't do it.
But it's amazing now 'cause you see it more and more, and it's probably one of the benefits of the auditors, for the internet, sorry, because you get auditors now. And it's a big problem in America, and it's becoming a growing problem in the UK, where police turn up and they don't even know the basics of the law.
That's right.
And they turn up and then start harassing somebody. And that person starts quoting, look, this is the law, this is the law. And the police do this thing. Not all. Some of them some of them know the law and they're like, well, he's not doing anything wrong. And they turn up and they kind of start harassing somebody. And you will have seen it as a police officer. I've seen it in police. If that sometimes these police are just like, well, I'm the police officer, I'm in charge, and this is what I've told you. And you're like,
That's
no,
right.
no, you forget that you don't have any authority. Your role is to prevent people breaching peace, breaking laws. That's your job, to investigate and prevent. It's a presence. You as an individual do not have authority other than the one gifted to you as a servant in the uniform.
That's right.
And they will, I've had these confrontations myself, and you're just like, no, stop. Let's just back up before you get yourself into trouble here. Well, what is the crime?
Yeah, well, that happens a lot. It happens where you are. It happens where we are here. There wouldn't be a week goes by without a court handing down a decision against the police. They have went above and beyond, and it
Above and beyond.
seems above and beyond. And oftentimes it comes down to something as simple as they won't back down.
Yeah, yeah,
You're not going to tell me what to do because I'm the law.
yeah,
And that's scary.
yeah. Mm.
And because if you can just imagine that in a scenario where the police here are armed, whereas in the UK they're still unarmed, but could you imagine in those police forces where the police officer's not that bright and he or she has got a gun on their hip
Mm.
and the situation escalates? It's scary.
Yeah, and some of these, especially like the rank and file officers, some of the issues you have is because over the years they've cut budgets for training. It's as simple as that. We've got to save some money, so we'll cut budgets for training. Oh, how can we make training more efficient? Why don't we invest more in training? Let's have a 2-year training course instead of trying to reduce it to 6 weeks online training.
Yeah, well, the thing that always amazed me was before CV-19 came along 3 years ago, And when the world stopped, essentially, because of this new disease, new virus, we were always being told by politicians there's no more money. The budget can't afford it. Sorry, no money. As soon as CV-19 here came, all of a sudden they opened up the money banks
Yeah.
and people were getting this grant and that grant and the other grant. And it tells me that if there's a will, then there's a way. And again, they need to invest in these kind of things. They need to train people because you can't expect some 18 or 19-year-old to go through the academy for a shortish amount of time, and then they're put out in the streets. Now, the streets are very, very bad news, particularly at the weekends in all big towns, with alcohol and drugs and aggro. And they get aggro and fights happen. And you need to back them up. I mean, my book isn't about to bash the police,
No.
but it's about to explore why is it young people, and I say the overwhelming majority of young police, when they join, it's for the good. They want to join to help society. They want to do the right thing. But what is it then that turns some of them so they become bad, a black knight?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's the theme as well of the book. What is it mentally that's changed? Because they've gone into the academy, they've been so proud on the day that they leave the academy, and then as their life goes on over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, then they change. So what's causing the change?
Yeah, and I think that's probably actually a really good place to finish, is that yeah, most police, if not 100%, 99.9%, they go into that because they have a pride in their community, and they want to help instill that pride and keep that a better place. So yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Look, again, thank you very much for your show. It's been fantastic to chat with you as well.
And you, no, I've really enjoyed it. I could have kept on going, but I need to finish up. Where can people find you and learn about you
Look,
and your book?
this is the book. As you can see, it was done in the UK, and that's I'm the publisher, Austin Macaulay,
Yep.
which is a UK firm. Austin. They can also contact me through them. They can also contact me at my email address, which I'll repeat. It's strike1286 at gmail.com. I'll repeat that, strike, strike1286 at gmail.com.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
And there you have it. What an interesting conversation, because corruption, as we all experience, is just rife, and we all have these big ideas about who's causing it, how does it happen, and that we would be better. And I think that's the problem. It's the nuances. It's the bits in between. One person slipping out 5 minutes is another person's discretion. One person, getting a job, having a blag, a perk of the job, is another person's corruption. And the further up the tree you go, the more you might be able to turn a blind eye. And sometimes, as we discussed, there is that percentage of people who are just rotten to the core. And then there's a percentage of people who had really good intentions and got caught up in the system of corruption. But it was a good chat, good conversation. And please do check out the link for all the details on how to find the book. And with that, as always, Thank you very much for listening, for watching, for sharing, all the comments and all the support. I really do appreciate it. And wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed.